So with everything that Professor Farrell was just talking about, everything like that in the forefront of our minds, I'm sure every single person in this room could think of a different threat, a different challenge when it comes to securing supply. And I could almost imagine that every single one would be very, very slightly different. So the question could be not what threats do we need to deal with, but what threats do we need to deal with now? And what threats should we have dealt with maybe years ago, or if even last week, the way the world is changing so quickly. So I'm really pleased to introduce our next speaker to talk about how to build a more secure energy system. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage to take us through this Executive Vice President and CEO of Transformers BU at Hitachi Energy. Please welcome Bruno Melles. Hi, Bruno. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. Really a pleasure for me to be here and to bring a little bit of clarity on how companies like Hitachi Energy are addressing the safety and security and the agility of the supply chain. I want to start from this beautiful picture behind me because that gives a little bit of a flavor on some of the challenges that we do have on bringing object, in this case a transformer, from A to B. And you can see we are not really talking about an Amazon shipment in this case. So I would like just to start with a brief overview on what we are facing in the energy system. We discussed a lot about the challenges. I discussed more about the opportunity we have because we all know what electrification is driving. And electrification is driving major investment. We talk about the modernization of the grids, but we always have to look back on the full energy and supply chain to realize that there are investments that have to start weeks, months, years, decades before those investments are going to materialize. Well, the beauty is that since a few years, actually immediately after COVID, the large majority of our partners started thinking not anymore about next year investment, but we started discussing about next 5 years investment, next decade investment. And then helped company like Hitachi thinking a little bit more about what behind me has to change in order to make it happen. We know how many lines are going to be built, how many kilometers of transmission and distribution line, how many gigawatts are going to be installed. So the key question is, which are the key elements of the supply chain where we have challenges today? Well, of course, one is manufacturing capacity. In a world that accelerated at a very high speed since 2022, the large majority of the supplier of goods being cables, transformer, towers for transmission line, realized that the manufacturing was not designed for that. And actually, we are moving away from a typical situation where we had one factory, one customers, to have a much more distributed way to supply the industry. Another point is critical material. I mean, for a long time, things like copper, steel, aluminum were in abundance. But today, we are realizing that conductors, specific form or type of steel are becoming very critical. And you all know, and we all know, that when we talk about investment in mining or steel manufacturing, those are investments that may take up to 10 years to materialize. Another important element is not only driven by geopolitical, but is driven by complexity, is the transportation and the logistic. Because with the dramatic acceleration of the energy transition, we do see ports, bridges, transportation across countries becoming a major constraint. When you have to cross a bridge and you have something that weighs 600 tons, then you realize that not all the bridges are designed for that. And last but not least, skilled workforce. And here, there are two different elements on the workforce. First, for a long time, somebody used the word boring, but the energy space was not attracting a lot of resources to the point that even a lot of vocational schools have been closed. Because we also have to keep in mind that when we talk about energy transition, the world doesn't need only engineers. We need welders, we need winders, we need people that are expert in manufacturing. And artificial intelligence cannot replace that. So how, as a company and as a society, we are going to address all those 4 elements of the constraint. So first of all, I think that the industry started moving, but now is accelerating on a much longer term planning and visibility. Why this is important? Well, it is important because the moment that our partners and customers sit with us and says, this is my pipeline for the next 5 to 10 years, company like Hitachi may say, okay, that is worth building a factory. And that is exactly what it is happening today. Expansion and building. Another important element is how we drive technology to help us in the supply chain. And here, I have to say that there is a major element that is connected to standardization. We talk about data center today. Data center is probably the most standardized industry that we have in the energy space today. Another very, very important element is connected to how we innovate through changes in the business model. Capacity reservation, long-term frame agreement, flexible sourcing, so one account to be served from many different factories. Then, of course, we discuss about how we make logistics feasible. And I will give you a few examples on how Hitachi is working on that. And last but not least, how we are making workforce a priority, not only for the company or not only for the grid modernization, but for the society and for the community. Now, how Hitachi is addressing that, and there are many different ways to address that, but I would like just to give you a couple of examples. The first example is that 5 years ago, we communicated a very, very aggressive investment plan. And this aggressive investment plan at that time was questioned, are you not over-investing? Well, the reality is that Hitachi can count on a very large footprint and can count on being a market leader in this space. This is why, for instance, if we talk about transformers, we have currently 60 factories globally. We are modernizing almost 50 of them, modernizing, expanding, and we have a long pipeline of greenfield coming to the point that we already committed on $4 billion investment. But as a company, we added 20,000 people in the last few years. And as a company, we are planning to more than double those numbers in the next 10-year strategic period. So all those elements of investment are relying on 2 things. First, customer intimacy, very strong engagement on the planning, in particular on the long term. Second, a strong work that we are making with government, institution, regulators, going straight to the municipalities where we are addressing the need of more school, more vocational school, but we go to the point of affordable housing. Because in the large majority of places where we have factories, one of the big gaps that we have is affordable housing. How can I scale up the workforce if I don't even have a place to feed those employees and colleagues? So at the end of the day, I'm very, very happy that as a company, the communication and the engagement that we have with the society, with the partners, with the municipality, is really giving us the edge to face the major development that we do see as a demand in the infrastructure. It is really helping us working with our partners to step away from a transactional approach and think and focus on the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years. There are customers that are working with us on 15 years long visibility of the pipeline. And then we are very, very committed on the investment that we communicated. That is an investment on innovation. It is an investment on CapEx, building factories, and it is an investment on bringing on board up to 40,000 people in the next strategic period. So thank you very much for your time, and I invite you really to take a look about some of the publications that we are posting in those days where we present in an even stronger way how we address the resilience and the agility of the supply chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Bruno, I'm going to get to come back on the stage and actually get involved in our panel discussion as well. We can get into some of those areas that he's talked about in a bit more detail. And actually, just, you know, when we talk about threats, throwing in affordable housing as being a threat to a skilled workforce, or the lack of it as being a threat to a skilled workforce, all these things just play into each other. Now, a little earlier this year, Eurelectric published a report on the state of the industry when it comes to being prepared, so all the threats that we can think of. And we thought it would be a really good moment now, before we discuss it further, just to get that overview on how the industry is and how prepared it is and what needs to be done. So to take us through the battle-tested power systems, please welcome on stage the Vice President for Corporate Safety and Security at Fortum, Jari Stenius.
All right, good afternoon on my behalf and warm welcome to Finland. Great to have you all here. So as a side job to my normal day job, I was also supporting Eurelectric as an issue manager of energy security and supported in making this report, so that's why I have the honor of presenting it as well here. The report has been super popular. It's by far the most downloaded report by Eurelectric, and well, that tells to me a story that it's high quality, the timing was very good, and the content is very, very relevant. And I made a promise to our CEO and also President of Eurelectric, Markus Rauramo, that even though it's been downloaded a lot, we'll get at least 2,000 downloads during the Power Summit more. And now I realize that there's about 700 participants in the summit, so I will need your help. You will all need to download it like 2 or 3 times for me to deliver. So I will provide a QR code in the end of the presentation, and you can actually find it in the exhibition area as well. But this presentation is basically just a teaser to the report, and I will go quickly through the situation in Ukraine, in Europe, what were our findings of the preparedness levels around Europe, and what are the kind of the high-level recommendations to the sector. So if we start, this is actually important to differentiate that there's 2 different realities. So one in Ukraine, where energy is a military target every day, and I will tell a bit more about that. And then the other one in Europe, where we see this hybrid influencing happening kind of on a different areas, and energy is a clear target there as well, because it's such an important part of the today's societies. But it's very important still to differentiate these 2 phenomena. This is also visible in the report. And if we first look at the situation in Ukraine, and the Eurelectric got a lot of information from DTEK, the Ukrainian energy company, and kind of identified 4 different waves of attacks, or how energy has been a target throughout the war. And it's ending to this mass combined drone and missile strike, and this is an ongoing tactic today. And I'm actually sad to say that they just broke a record last month of the most long-range drones launched from Russia to Ukraine. It was 8,150 drones in the month of May. So this is ongoing. So that means like 260 drones every day launched to Russia, from Russia to Ukraine. And basically this number of drones gives the opportunity to target all kinds of energy assets, so even the overhead lines. So this is Ukraine every day. But then if we look at what's happening in Europe, we kind of identified some of the cases that have happened. You have read from the news what kind of hybrid incidents have happened around Europe. There's like cable cuts or cyber attacks or whatnot, and we can actually even add some more about the arsons or mis- and disinformation campaigns. And these are happening all around Europe. And even though there are like links on these 2 different worlds, these are still different cases, and you cannot attribute that everything is done by Russia, and most likely it's not. That would be actually Russia's wish to make us all think that whatever happens, it's always Russia. That's not the case. And as a responsible of our security, my mindset is so that I don't even care who is doing what. I need to be able to cope with the consequences and impact to our business. But these are happening all over the Europe as well. And then we, Eurelectric, interviewed some 10 companies around the Europe, and thank you for the companies who participated. I know quite many of you are here. About the assets, that what's the preparedness level today. And that kind of varies based on the size, the type of the assets, or the geography. And geography from that point of view, that basically closer you are to Russia, the more prepared you are, which is, I think it's quite natural. But this also brings an issue. If you look at the hybrid cases, those are happening all around the Europe, not just close to the Russia. So we should be better prepared for them because we need to live with them every day. And the threat perspective is such that no utility wants to be the weakest link, because that's who's going to get the hit. So in the cyber domain, of course, looking for the weakest link, that's the easiest hit, whether it's been a state actor or opportunistic crime. So there's a need. The utilities understand the threats, but there still could be opportunities to improve. And that's why we introduced a couple of concepts in the report, and I'm going to show you the bow tie model. I'll explain it quickly. This is actually stolen, or not stolen, but borrowed from the process safety industry. We'll give it back to the process safety industry when we have used it. But it's actually very relevant for the security domain as well. The idea is that the actual event, whether it's been a cyber attack or a drone hit or whatever bad thing happening, it's in the middle. And then the time before that, it's on the left side, and you need to have a kind of actions to try to make it not happening, the bad case, to prevent it from happening, or at least lower the probability. But then if and when something bad happens, you need to also have capabilities to respond and to mitigate the consequences. And for example, in the Ukrainian drone case, they are able to intercept about 92% of the drones last month launched from Russia. So basically, they are 92% able to operate on the left side, but then 10% they need to operate on the right side and mitigate the consequences and have the stockpiles and rebuilding capabilities in place. So you need to have these both sides in balance. And this also emphasizes the reality that sort of a 100% protection, it's not feasible. And then if we think how to increase the resilience and preparedness, and looking at the recommendation side, well, I like to think it from sort of 3 different levels, like individual, organizational, and systemic. And we need to work on all of these levels. So we need to have the individual level boosted, like having the mindset, skills, personal accountability, because it's all about the people at the end of the day. So every individual needs to have capabilities to be prepared. And I can share a lot of examples from Finland during the breakout sessions, for example. And then the organizational level, what the organizations can do, for example, focus on situational awareness, so knowing what's happening, what the threats are out there. Collaborate with the authorities. We cannot do it ourselves. We need support from the authorities, very important. And then exercise. So no plan is good plan until it's been tested and exercised. And of course, focus on asset protection, usually the passive protection, what we can do to make our assets less vulnerable and more protected. And then the important part is also the systemic level, and maybe a bit more from the electricity point of view, that we believe that the most resilient system is as balanced as possible. So having the stable, flexible, variable production, it's resilient against any kind of threats, not just this war scenario, but whatever storm or sort of a normal asset failure comes, the balanced system is the best. And actually what applies to all of these levels, what we need the most is the trust, collaboration, and then of course like supporting policies to make this happen. Good news is, even though there's a lot of things we should and could do better, that right now you're in a country that is pretty good on this area. So we have prepared on different levels of the system, and we're very eager to share these learnings as well. So it's possible. There's nothing impossible. If the Finns can do it, then everyone can do it. That's maybe the statement. Good. And I'll start to end by saying that kind of self-evident at this point that the utilities are the front line keeping essential services running during crisis and between the crises. That's important. And there's a lot we can do, but time for action is now. So I don't know how much time we have to wait, but if we don't start to do things better, the time will run up at some point. So this was a teaser to the report. Thank you. I will share the QR code so you can start downloading that. And with these words, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Jari, thank you so much. Jari, Stenius, just before you go, what the figure of the drones? The 206, on average, 260 a day?
A day, yes, on average. That's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. It's a really sobering thought. Thank you so much. Thank you. And it's from that moment that we are now going to move into this discussion. So talking about the threats that we've just been hearing about, but also the wider threats as well. The threats and the challenges that the whole industry is dealing with on a day-to-day basis from wherever those threats are coming from. So let me introduce some people on stage. I'll just do names, then I'll explain who they are when they're all on stage. So please come and join me. Alberto, Mendez, Rebollo, Jorma Malimaki, Una Buckley, and Bruno. Do you want to come back and join us again? Thank you. Hi, Alberto. Hi. Come and take a seat. I'll sit on that one if you wouldn't mind. So if I go that one, if you wouldn't mind. Lovely, thank you. Hi, Una. Bruno, thank you very much. Thank you, lovely. It's good to have you here. Thank you.
It's okay.
Get ourselves all shuffled around. Fabulous. Before I hear from anyone on the panel, what I thought I would do is find out how everybody feels. So just what is top of your mind? So I wonder if you could get your phones out for me. And let's just do a little bit of a poll in the room. So let's have a Slido code up for you. And what we thought we would do is just ask you a very general question on security. So what we are asking you is, when talking about security in relation to energy, in your mind, what is the biggest threat that we face today? So I do appreciate that many in the room will want to mark more than one, but I'm looking for today, where you are right now, and what you see as the biggest threat. Gosh, look at that. Okay. Those on stage, if you can't see, you can, there's just behind you if you wanted to turn around to have a look. So very clearly, it's cyber attacks, malware and the like that's coming out on top there. Climate change, equipment supply change, that's something that Bruno was certainly talking about. Physical attacks on infrastructure. It's obviously very representative of the room and where we are. But nearly half saying cyber attacks. Okay, thank you. Can we leave that up on stage just for a moment? Let's just leave it there. What do you think? Who wants to either agree or disagree? Una, what about you? Do you want to all grab a microphone? Fabulous, thank you. Which one would you have gone for?
I think I'd put those two the highest. So hello everybody, my name is Una Buckley. I'm the head of the ministry in charge of climate and energy in Dublin and Ireland. And very glad to be here. I used to also be in charge of national cybersecurity in Ireland until a recent government change, but they still are lodging in my building, because it's bespoke designed. Ireland and Europe is increasingly concerned about the ability for hybrid attacks on infrastructure, and Jari very carefully outlined We are not suffering from deliberate, direct acts of war, which of course would be a really fundamental shift, and let us hope, touch wood, it doesn't arise in the European Union. But we are watching them happen in a neighbouring country in a very real way and supporting that country to try and keep its power supply on. But we are also increasingly concerned at the ability for hybrid and deniable attacks across the European Union. They are happening on a daily, weekly and monthly basis. They are happening in every European state. Ireland itself suffered one of the biggest attacks ever directed against a state property, which is during COVID when we lost our health service. Our entire health service was taken down by a deniable state proximate actor, which was a theft attack. But cyber attacks now have mutated into much more serious and much more directed attacks that are designed essentially to undermine faith in our countries and our systems.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, there are some very important directives which every person here will probably be implementing in the course of the next few weeks and months, if they're not already doing so, as the Critical Entities Regulation, the SIR directive, and NIS 2, the beautifully named NIS 2. And it is critically important for our energy infrastructure, along with so many others, but energy in particular because it underpins the delivery of so many other public services like water, for example, or telecoms. As we discovered in Ireland when Storm Éowyn knocked out our energy supplies for up to 3 weeks in some of the western parts of Ireland, and they also lost water and telecoms connectivity. So it's critically important that energy in particular protect themselves against these attacks. As many of you know, Ireland is starting its next presidency of the European Union on the 1st of July. There has been a correlation of attacks with countries holding the presidency. We can't say it's caused by it because we suffer those attacks and all countries suffer those attacks. But it is something that we have a very heightened awareness of and something we are preparing for very diligently, thankfully in cooperation with our fellow EU member states.
Una, thank you very much. Thank you. Alberto, let me come to you next. Alberto is the CEO and co-founder of Plexigrid.
Yeah.
Would you have gone with cyber attacks as the top one?
Absolutely. And to elaborate on this, much of our grid systems are compromised already for years. Nobody pushed the button, but I used to work at Vattenfall, we found a few. So you take smart meters, for example, running on PLC. The data goes through the copper cables. You just need a hook, and it goes unencrypted. This is forming now parts of instrumentation to make decisions. It used to be for billing, but now we're using it for a lot more things. This threat of inverters, Chinese or not, well, they can be European, but if a smart hacker managed to put them out. As you know, in Spain, we create the blackout was because of an overvoltage. I mean, we had to investigate cyber attack, but it was an overvoltage. So when you get at 1.1 nominal value, all inverters were programmed to disconnect, creating an N-14 event because we have 14 gigawatts of solar that disconnected. But you can do this with hacking. And no power system in Europe can survive, no amount of inertia can survive N-14. And so, and there are new threats. I mean, all these distributed energy resources, none of the firmware, none of the communication protocols are critical infrastructure ready. Nevertheless, they are part now of the critical infrastructure, and you can wipe out entire systems with that. So, you know, and we don't talk about AI attacking our systems. We're going to be about to be attacked by the most sophisticated AI from our enemies. So I think by far this is the largest, you know.
That would be top of your list, yeah.
And the first brutal attack from Russia before Crimea and before the war was they managed to put the Ukraine on the dark by cyber attack as well, right? So I think it's not a theoretical risk, it's materializing. And a lot of our infrastructure is compromised already. It's just that nobody has pushed the button yet. So I think there is a lot of work because these systems were designed on a world that we were a lot more naive. because it was the global world where everybody trust each other and we're good guys.
Well, that's actually going back to what Professor Farrell said at the beginning, isn't it? Systems have changed. Let me now bring in Jorma. Jorma is the Chief Executive of Elenia. So would you have gone with cyber attacks or maybe something slightly different?
Well, actually, I mean, Elenia is the second largest electricity DSO here in Finland. And I mean, of course, we are very worried about cyber attacks. So I would put that first as well. I mean, we have like those kind of traditional threats from cyber criminals. I mean, you can nowadays even purchase services like crime as a service from web and attack. We need to protect our IT systems as well as OT, so operational technology. So I would really, have that, because it's like existing threat and could be part of those hybrid activities, not only from let's say criminal parties or operators, but also from state-driven hostile operators. So in a way, I see it so that the risk footprint has increased. What comes to this climate change, I see that more like a long-term risk and threat in our energy system and especially electricity system. However, we just had, for example, in our network area right after Christmas, in the beginning of this year, really bad storm. So over 150,000 Elenia's customers suffered power outages during the storm, and during the worst moment there were over 76,000 customers without electricity simultaneously. And so we can say that, I mean, those kind of storms in Finland, also snow loads and ice loads, I mean, they are existing as well. Yeah. But I still see that this climate change is like a longer-term threat, and I also see it in a way that when we are preparing ourselves to operate in those kind of storm situations, we also increase our preparedness for other kind of threats.
So it's all interlinked.
Exactly, regarding physical attacks and so forth.
It's interesting because I did say very clearly, let's talk about this for now. What's your biggest threat today, as it were? But you are absolutely right. It's the climate change threat that is underpinning so many of the long-term plans. But actually, they're changes that you have to make now. Would you have gone with cyber attacks as well, Bruno?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Right now we are talking about cyber attacks that are going to impact the energy infrastructure. Unfortunately, there are already cases where those cyber attacks may influence the safety of the people. For instance, the case that was mentioned about the dam in Norway. I mean, the reality is that they have a flood. So this is something where the large majority of the IT infrastructure is not ready to face that. There is a big discussion about airplane and how easy is to enter in an airplane IT system because they've been designed in the 70s and the 80s. So it is really a threat. On the climate change, I have to say that there are a few geographies that are far more affected than Europe. I mean, in the Nordic, there is a very strong job on grounding all the cable distribution. But if you think about the large majority of North America, the large majority of Australia and South Asia is still directly affected because the overhead line. And I really see a lot of efforts to ground the overhead line. But there is where we are facing the criticality of shortage of contractors. Because one of the biggest points on implementing distribution utility investment is a shortage of contractors. And that is going to be even worse going forward.
Gosh, there is a lot to talk about. I'll tell you what we'll do, before we start looking at those in a bit more detail, if I could have the next Slido, please. Because just what I want to ask you is, have we missed anything? Was there anything on that list that you are sitting there at the moment going, you've not said this, and I think this is the biggest thing? So, mythos. straight there as a threat. Yep, anything else? I've got about half a dozen people typing at the moment. What's the threat? Misinformation. Gosh.
Skilled workers.
Skilled workers, yeah. Affordability. We can look at the finance for this as well, I think. Recovery systems, copper. So I'm going to take that maybe as a challenge on the critical raw materials as well, and those supply lines with the cobalt as well, the lithium, everything that is needed there. I don't know who it was that said we face all of them, just some more than others. Yes. Skilled workers, critical raw materials, there we go, right in the middle. AI, misinformation, affordability. Okay, thank you. Is there anything anyone here would have said that we've missed? Or anything else? Jorma? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I liked, Bruno's presentation about, you had those various elements that we need to, in a way, ensure, and this skilled workforce and competence was one of the areas. And I think that's really, really important, that not only on the manufacturing side and from our perspective on the supplier side, but also in the utilities and companies. So we need to have an access to skilled workforce, and that also means that, we need to, in a way, have a clear outlook, clear forecasts what comes to our investments in the network, and do that in a reliable way so that we can also communicate that to our contractors and suppliers so that they can then, hire people and really make sure that we and our contractors and suppliers and the whole network attract good people and competence. So in a way, doing this in a very transparent way, having clear investment plans. So that's really, important for us, for our partners, and also for young people who are now maybe, thinking what they should do in the future. So we, in a way, need to make sure that we are one option for their career.
Sure. We have had, though, this conversation about skilled workers for I don't know how many years now, of making sure that you've got the right people in the right place and they're there as part of the workforce. It's a question, though, that still keeps coming up. So what are we doing wrong? Why are we not?
Well, maybe I share a personal experience that happened 2 weeks ago. We had a town hall only with the Gen Z people. And
Is that all you invited? No one else?
We invited only Gen Z.
Did you do it on TikTok as well?
No. We did it. It was the old way of being in person. Okay? And I don't want to make the discussion boomers versus Gen Z, but the reality is the expectation of the evolution of the workforce is going to be dramatically different in the next 10 years. And if you think about a vocational school, that for instance was very, very attractive to me, is not attractive anymore for the large majority, in the large majority of the countries. In Asia, it's still a very hot topic, but when you go to Europe and North America, it's not a hot topic anymore. Nobody wants to be a welder. Nobody wants to be a winders. Nobody wants to be a mechanic. And that is going to create a gap between what we are going to need and the amount of resources that we are going to have. Now, we can discuss about how artificial intelligence is going to help us, but in manufacturing, you're still going to need maybe more optimized, but still manufacturing process. This is one of the hottest topics that we have on the table as a scaling up Hitachi going forward.
Is that a threat for you, Una? Do you see lack of skilled workforce or training people properly as a threat to supply?
No more than any other sector in any economy in Europe, to be honest with you. I think that's a very sector-specific concern because you're an employer. But to bring it back to the topic of security and security of systems, and one of the things that's possibly being missing here is the need to rethink how we design energy systems so that we put them on a more secure footing more generally. And I just go back to what happened in the Ukraine. So what happened was there was a cyber attack, and then they started to bomb and capture the big facilities, the big power gen sites, the big overhead cables. So what energy systems, what needs to happen in energy systems, and this is as much the long-term play for climate and adaptation as for potential other nefarious actors, is to ensure that you can put more localized resilience into systems. So you build systems around smaller generation, renewables is perfect for this obviously, around a battery design system so that you can restart systems, you can respond more quickly, and you no longer have the need to have major pieces of hugely vulnerable infrastructure, hugely vulnerable overhead lines, high voltage lines and so forth. Instead, you're building systems that have resilience as a core metric into them. I absolutely agree that having a skilled workforce is a hugely problematic problem, but I think that that is just something that is shared, frankly, by...
On the security side.
Yeah.
So if you then redesign as is happening, and then you have your sort of your assets in lots of different places, and you have a system that can switch from one to another, are you not creating lots and lots and lots of different security problems because of lots and lots of different sites?
Less than if you keep it as it is. Okay. So the cost of inaction or the risk of inaction here is, I think, immensely bigger than the risk of action. It's going to be difficult, but...
Yeah.
I would actually add one thing, which was maybe missing partly, but it was very, well defined in the report which Jari presented. This system-level approach, I mean, as we heard earlier, so we have been investing a lot in Finland to secure the distribution networks. So basically we are undergrounding existing overhead lines. For example, Elenia, we had the underground cabling rate in our network in 2012, 24%. Now we have 67%. So we have constructed more than 37,000 kilometers of underground cables in medium voltage and low voltage levels. So that's really important in a way to prepare things beforehand. We have done that mainly for storms and snow loads, ice loads, but of course it's also in a way we are hardening the network regarding other types of physical attacks and so forth. But which I think is also important, that we increase the capacity of the electricity system. If you think about Ukraine, I mean, the main reason why they have coped so well under those drone attacks and missile attacks is that there has been extra capacity in the electricity production and electricity networks, so both transmission and distribution, since the Soviet Union times. I mean, they were prepared for heavy industry and so forth, so they really had lots of capacity in the system. And that has safeguarded the operation, so, I mean, until now, even though the network and power system has been severely damaged, but they had extensive capacity, which we don't have in rest of the Europe at the moment. And by increasing capacity, when we are investing in the network, we can also enable business growth for ourselves, for our municipalities, for our customers, enable green transition and better future for our people and our children, and also then improve the resilience and security of supply and emergency supply. So I really see that this capacity and investment, that's really crucial, and it's like a system-level approach, and that also requires good incentives and legislative changes.
Well, so I wanted to ask you about that, because a lot of the cables being underground and all the rest of it, a lot of that was sort of legislated for. So is that the answer? I mean, do we need to have more regulations, more political oversight, maybe, of the security? And the look on Una's face is really interesting, because she's going, I don't know. But go on.
Political oversight, I'm not sure. Not that politicians don't have a hugely important role to play. Can I just point out, though, and I'm interested to hear this about the Finnish experience, because our estimates are for some types of lines, particularly the higher voltage lines, really overhead is the technical solution that's necessary to try and underground them. Quintuples the cost, something like that, and makes them less secure in some respects. Whereas low voltage, the one thing that really worries me, though, is apparently for all the low voltage line in Ireland, which isn't the biggest country in the world, apparently we could wrap it around the equator twice. And if we have to underground all of that, I frankly don't know how we're going to pay for it. And we certainly can't ask customers to pay for it. So some element of this, I think, is resilience, but also a certain acceptance that, as I say, you need to build in more localized resilience, so that if we can't get you in the first week, or the second week, or even the third week, and I should say, since I'm on a stage in Finland, thanks very much to the Finnish engineers who came to help repair our cables after Eowyn. We got help from all over Europe, which was wonderful. And that's part of our resilience preparedness, by the way. But I think some part of this needs to be, can we prepare people to be resilient for, as they have done in Finland, for the few days where you might be without power? And do you have the water to drink? Do you have a backup battery? And we are only at the starting in that process in Ireland, and we need to get there much faster.
So that's actually almost changing a relationship with a customer and saying, look, we are your service provider, however, this is the world that we work within. Alberto,
I was reflecting on the list before still, but there was a word there, complexity and voltage oscillations. They were small, but I think it's missing in the discussion. And pro-renewables or not, look at my CV. I've been doing renewables half of my professional life, and that's the way to get out of fossil fuel dependency from Russia and so on. But it's unquestionable we are building ourselves into an immensely more complex system than what it was designed for. The grid 1.0 was designed for large, centralized, dispatchable power plants with very predictable power flows, one directional from the large power plants to the cities to the household. Energy transition is one by one exactly the opposite. And this is systems theory that comes from biology. When the speed of change in the environment of a system is changing faster than the ability of that system to adapt to that change, you will experience system instability and eventually system failure. I think the Spanish blackout, which is the largest disruption to security of supply, at least in magnitude, we managed to put down Portugal as well. If France doesn't cut us off on time, it will have propagated to France and Central Europe, and it could have got a lot worse. And we managed to move the whole frequency of Europe, of the mess we created. We stumbled upon our own fate. It was not Putin. We stumbled around our own complexity. And we see that in all countries with advanced energy transitions, we start to see a lot more occurrence of this. South Australia has a similar collapse, a full blackout on solar and overvoltage. So I think intelligence, we're going to have to develop an entire new layer of intelligence, particularly in the distribution layer, to manage this complexity. Otherwise, we can forget about full energy transition or anything like that. It's got to work. So what kind of technology? I mean, we're in the land of Nokia, and I'm very optimistic that this is something where we can win US. The global telecommunication standard was developed by the Finns and the Swedes, Ericsson and Nokia, and we beat the Americans. That was the Motorola standard because it was far superior. And actually, US depends on that technology, and we have decided not to weaponize because we are to be trusted. You know what I mean? So I think the next generation of grid technology, and if you think of the big four, right? I always say that Schneider Electric and Siemens European and Hitachi Energy is a European company with Japanese capital, so at least I see half European,
Me too.
And then you have GE. So out of the big four, at least 2.5, right, Bruno, is European roots. So I think this is something that we can nail, and it's not only to be the press of the threats and so on, it's how can we be 3 steps ahead. There's a huge opportunity for Europe in this.
Well, okay, huge opportunity for Europe. Una has already talked about how the Finns helped after your storm. So what about mutual assistance then? I mean, how do you put all of that together? Is there a framework for that? And actually, should there be more, as Alberto was suggesting, actually more information sharing as well?
Well, first of all, can I say I think the arrangements for mutual assistance have become much more formalised, actually, even in the 6 months after Eowyn, when, as I say, we pulled people from all over Europe to come and help us. Prior to that, we'd only ever had to ask for assistance from GB in France, and we'd only ever had to give assistance to GB in France. Since then, we have gone to Portugal and helped Portugal with their network. Can I just say, just back to the cyber stuff, this has to be a public-private partnership in terms of managing this. It's critical that networks build in their own defences. It's critical then when the incidents happen, they give the information quickly to the public authorities, so the public authorities can react, can respond, can deal with it appropriately. And it's critically then that, as Jari said, that after the incidents, we rebuild and then we learn and we change our policy as quickly as possible. And that's one of the things I think that to build in the resilience to our systems, it's going to have to be the private sector and the public sector, the regulators and the policymakers like myself, acting together to try and make sure that at the very least we don't lose the same battle over and over again. We are prepared for the next, and then really willing to think about what will be the next challenge to come and the next challenge to come. And so this is a very strange world we're living in. One of the things perhaps that didn't come up on the list was geopolitics generally, and our fossil fuel dependence, which is still out there and still in our energy systems. So it's something that we need to think about in terms of trying to move down this electrification journey.
Yeah. Jorma, do you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the importance of cooperation and collaboration. So this public-private cooperation, and actually in Finland we have this total defense concept or system, and that is very much built on the collaboration between various parties working in the society, and that is really, I mean, really important for the success. And I mean, we shouldn't still forget also the importance of individual citizens. So I mean, for example, in Finland we have this kind of 72-hour reserve thinking that each and every household should have, water supply or water reserves, food reserves, radio, lighting, etc. for 72 hours. So to cope 3 days without, electricity or heating or anything like that. And we should remember that someone said that we are like 3 warm meals away from anarchy.
Yes.
And the anarchy can start pretty quickly if our citizens are not, happy.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And Bruno, do you want to come in on that as well? Because it is a case of almost redefining the contract with citizens, almost. Not saying that you're going to get less, but saying things have changed. Things are a different world. We are all playing our part. I don't know, do you agree?
Yes, I mean, it is an integral part of the education that people should and will have on how to deal with the uncertainty, no question about it. But I have to say, before I go there, I would just to go back on the fact that we keep talking about the dependency on fossil fuel. Well, we just need to keep in mind that Europe doesn't have raw materials.
Yeah.
So,
which was actually what came up on one of the things.
Actually, we talk about critical material, but one of the biggest shortage that unfortunately we are going to face in the world is going to be copper. Yeah. Nobody talk about copper. Everybody talk about cobalt. Everybody talk about, no, it's copper the problem, because nobody's investing in copper mines. So I think that Europe, without to go to the security of food, that is for sure a very important element, has to realize that our level of dependency to material outside Europe is extreme. And we have very, very good friends that help us in those kind of things, but they may be friends today and not tomorrow. So I think that the resilience on material is a major challenge that we need to face as a European Union.
And on copper, the yields are going down and down and down. That means that we need to be prepared for more and more expensive copper. Even when people will be prepared to extract it, it's going to cost a lot more.
I think if we did the list again now, I think the list would be 3 times as long as all those different things. This is something that obviously we could talk about for a lot longer. I am sure these conversations will now continue. Are you all happy if people approach you to continue this conversation privately or in a smaller group?
Absolutely.
Fabulous. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, sadly we're out of time, but please thank our amazing guests who were so transparent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.